Are you trying to figure out how to submit a candidate to a client? Check out this video right now because there's a science to it. Hey, welcome to the Millionaire Recruiter. I'm Brandon Rooney, your Millionaire Recruiter. If you have not seen this channel before, it's all about upping your game in the recruiting industry. So let's get to it. First of all, hope you like my talent perch shirt. A little plug here. Okay, agency recruiters. This can actually apply to internal recruiters as well, but it is more focused on external just because I'm saying the word client. But you could really just put in for hiring manager. This definitely is applicable. So when you are submitting a resume to a client, that your intake, your message to them needs to be super powerful. It definitely has to, and this is kind of another video, but there is a rhyme or reason to the order of it, because it's just, you're getting them used to, like, you know, seeing what's super important and going down the line. But first and foremost, you have to make your candidate shine. So essentially, why is the hiring manager or the client looking at this resume? Why should they take an hour of their time to talk to them? Huge. Think of it like that. Let me take a step back. Think of it like that. If you are going to have another person spend an hour talking to a candidate you represented, you better know that that candidate is interested and that they're good for this role, that you have already vetted them. That is your reputation. Now, has candidates thrown you under the bus before and was like, I'm sorry, what company am I interviewing for? Yeah, they're jerks, right? That happens. You cannot control everything, but that phone call with the candidate should have relationship tied to it. You should have had them look at their job description if there is one and make sure that they are indeed interested and you know why they are interested. Not just, oh, you talked them into it. You have to have some kind of why behind things because that's what's going to keep the candidate interested and that's what's going to make the hiring manager or the client happy. So when you're giving the whys, another thing to think about is you should give the why nots. So there's very rarely perfect candidates, right? On paper, maybe it looks great, but when you're talking to them, maybe a couple things come out where you're like, I don't know if this is going to work well. You need to tell them the why nots because if you omit those, again, credibility, out the window, not cool. That's like, with our industry, we are constantly, because we're in the sales industry, right? No, we're recruiters, but we're in that realm. So essentially, they're always trying to think that we're trying to sell something and that therefore we have to be dishonest. We don't. You can tell it exactly how it is. Now, spin it in a nice manner. So for example, if you happen to talk about a candidate and they were just rude to you and they said like, look, I don't really like recruiters, but I'm going to talk to you right now because I know that you're going to put my resume in front of the hiring manager. Has candidates said that before? Yes, they have. So are you going to tell the hiring manager that? That's not something you have to tell them. They were rude to you based off of our industry having a bad name. That's not on the company. Now, are they jerks? Maybe. It doesn't feel good, right? But those are the things that as a recruiter, we kind of fall on our sword for. So you can say, you know, for me in particular, I didn't have a connection with this candidate, but the candidate's very interested because of X, Y, Z, and they fit the role. You could mention that, you know, because guess what? If the candidate's now going to be rude to someone else at the company, they're going to be like, what the heck? And so if you already kind of gave them a heads up that maybe the conversation relationship with you didn't go super great, then they now know that, hey, they're not going to call on you mid interview process and say, Brandon, can you go talk to this candidate? Because they're already going to know your relationship's not strong. And that's okay. Your relationship doesn't have to be strong with everyone, but you have to be honest. So also what's really important is you have to give info on how to close this candidate. Now you're thinking, I just spoke to this candidate. How am I supposed to know what the close is? Come on, recruiters. It's their motivators. What is the candidate's motivators? There can be tons of different motivators, but you have to narrow it down as to at least their top three. So for example, I'm going to say, hey, the candidate is really interested in moving up to manager rank and they want to talk about how your company can do that for them. That's the close. So let's just say that it goes really well with that candidate at the end and throughout the interview, because remember, you're not closing at the end. You're closing throughout the entire interview process. So every single interview for that particular person, the interviewer should mention how they can put them on the manager track and how they do that, how they've done it before. You know, it has to be really nice. And then if you're not going through an applicant tracking system, so I would say more often than not, companies hopefully have an ATS, right? They have a system. It's Greenhouse, Lever, JobVite, whatever it is. They have a system that you can enter resumes, you can check on status, you can put the notes in. It's all tracked, right? But there's plenty of smaller companies. I know I have lots of smaller companies, like Series A companies, for example, that don't have that yet. And then I'm sending the candidates directly to the VP of Engineering, the CTO, you know, the actual decision makers. So the way you want to work that out is you put their full name in the subject, you put a little dash, and then you're going to put what job it's for. Okay, super important. So you got to think, not only does that help you organize and keep track, that's going to help your client, your hiring manager, organize and keep track and do their own folder. So the easier you can make it for them, the easier essentially it's going to make it for you. So definitely track it like that, and then come up with some kind of format. Again, I have this for another video, but come up with a format on what your intake is going to look like in the email, because it should be the same all the time. Always keep the same format. I even go as far as to keep the same formats in resumes. So I had this, the way I formatted everyone's resume, it always looked the same, assuming it wasn't like take a lot of time to redo it. Like sometimes PDFs are a little difficult, but if they're always like Word resumes, for the most part, super simple to format. But the reason why I did that is because they always knew that the resume came from me. They got used to the format. It was very simple to read. It was very straightforward. And that alone develops a great working relationship with you guys. And so once you are growing with a company and there's maybe recruiters there, there's other managers that are looking at your resumes, they know, it was techies at the time, but Talent Perch, they know that Talent Perch has this format and represents their resume. So they can just look at it. Can that be a bias sometimes? Well, yeah, kind of, but guess what? You want them to be biased with your resumes and your intake formats because they know that you know your shit. That's what's important. So you want to get to a relationship with a client that they're no longer even spending that much time on a resume. All they're doing is looking at your intake format on the candidate. They trust that you know what you're talking about, and they know just via the intake that this is going to be a good candidate. One last thing to note, and it just goes on to the why not, but I've even gone so far as to say, hey, this candidate only is missing 3 things that you've been wanting, which are X, Y, Z. However, the passion for your industry and this side project, I think, would make them an excellent culture fit, and they would just need to be trained on a couple things. So I said why I'm sending it to them, and I also said this is perhaps an issue, right? And so just that right there shows that I know what I'm talking about. You always have to know what you're talking about. So if a candidate, if a client passes on one of your candidates, you should know why. And you should have been like, oh yeah, I can see that. So have those self-reflection moments of self-awareness. And again, be the great, honest recruiter. Help me change the way the world views recruiting, please. It takes all of us. If you do not have that training yet, please check out thriversity.io. That will definitely be in the notes below for sure. We have all sorts of training solutions for you all because again, we're trying to change this. So thanks so much. I will see you every Thursday at noon. And don't forget, the money is just a vessel to do all the amazing things you want to go do in life. Go live it. And I'm also putting another video up here to help you submit candidates. So definitely check this out. I've got lots of videos that can help you on your journey. See you next week.